That's better.
For me, then I'm feeling
Okay.
So, is the stream meant to be live right now, or? There's nothing like a bit of extra suspense.
Yeah, I'm getting the lyrics of the song anyway.
Exactly. Now I get the Kano.
Yeah, it's getting through. Sound is getting through. Perfect. Yeah, of course.
Oh, we are live. Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the test. I'm glad you can hear our audio. We're not computer noobs. Yay. Absolutely.
Yes, there. Hello, everyone. Hey, Mark. Called us, yeah. Thanks for joining early. Glad to have you on board. Stay tuned. We're starting in a few minutes.
Beautiful. I'm not sure if we should do some kind of New Year style countdown for 7. I don't know. Don't want to be too dramatic. Oh boy. Oh. I guess we can slowly start entering people eventually.
What's up?
Cool. I guess open the doors.
All right, yes. Let the people in. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the DEF CON Switzerland virtual conference, the first it is. Let's give everyone a few minutes to actually join in. Just in the background, you have two options. You can either join through the Google Meet, or you can look at the live stream on YouTube. It's both going to be the same content. Both have the options for a chat, so it's up for you to decide which one you trust more and which one you like more. But choose either one, because there will be a slight delay of about 10 seconds on the YouTube channel. All right, I see more and more people joining. That's good. Good evening, everyone. I'd say let's give the usual 1 or 2 minutes to get everyone settled. Even though we're in Switzerland, I know giving the extra time is fair.
It is. We're an international community, so you want to be welcoming everyone, right? So let's be considerate.
Absolutely, yes. Good morning to everyone from East Coast, West Coast, or wherever you might be dialing in.
Come on. Appreciate your dedication on being here.
It's all about Timecryption, exactly, yeah. At least apparently it is.
Great time to stock up on the drinks and snacks because, yeah, from what I've seen, it's going to be a wild ride, so I'm certainly looking forward to it.
All right, let's start then. So Welcome, everyone. Thanks again for joining the first DEF CON Switzerland mini virtual conference. We're definitely excited. We hope you guys are excited as well. So thanks for joining in. I know you probably have been doing so many virtual events by now that you don't really need a breather, but just some housekeeping rules as usual. Make sure to mute yourself. You can unmute yourself, but we can mute yourself as well, so please keep yourself muted. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Should you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. You can use either the Google Meets or the chat at the YouTube channel, and we will relay the question back to Ange afterwards. There will be a recording of the talk, so if you need to drop off early, we hope not, but of course there will be a chance to rewatch it as well. And the slides are available online as well. We'll post a link in a second in the chat and make it available through Twitter as well, of course. So with that, of course, yes, have fun, stay nice. And yes, I'd say that's all from the housekeeping side. So no further ado, let's hand it over to Ange Albertini, our good friend. Most of you probably know from Cork Ami, from Endless Puzzles, but I'll leave it up to himself how much he wants to reveal about himself. And the title of today's talk is Timecryption, Friendly Today, Evil Tomorrow. So glad it's just today. And over to you, Ange.
So welcome everyone. And this is also my first virtual online talk. So it's a good, interesting experience for everyone. So the talk for today is called Timecryption. But the longer title of it is Abusing One-Time Pads with Binary Polyglots. And this talk is a work with Stefan Körbel and myself and other people at Google. But particularly, Stefan was super useful explaining me what I needed to know about cryptography, and I know very little, so that the research could go further. And so you have his bio, and then there's mine, so me, file format forever. That's about it. That's my stuff. So this is not about anything new cryptographic wise. This is just another use of file format tricks, but some new stuff to me too. And this is specifically about things like so one-time pads, as mentioned before, so GCM, and which is tender, and let's raise awareness about how you can exploit it and how you should be. How careful you should be when you use it. So we actually made a much more serious paper than this talk and slides on the topic. The currently public paper is not out. We are about to update it anyway. So if you want the real serious stuff, then it's already on ePrint. And otherwise, stay tuned if you want vulgarization and easier access things for people like me. So how you may know the CTR mode, the counter mode from Wikipedia. And again, I'm very limited in crypto and stuff. So I definitely needed 10 hours of Stefan explaining me stuff so that I understand things correctly. Basically, it used a nonce, so used only once number. And it generates a key stream from the nonce and the key, and the key is exactly the length of the plain text, and the ciphertext is just the ciphertext is just generated by XORing the plain text with the key stream. So basically, this is a one-time pad, which already gives you an explanation of the title. So we're going to talk about CTR and GCM and other modes, which are all basically based on the same idea of XORing against the key stream generated from nonce and counters things. So this is just how simple it is, just XOR against a key stream, which depends on the nonce and the key and the cipher itself. But in our case, it's always about AES, but it could just work with anything else. So what is technically being encrypted by the block cipher is the combinations of the nonce and the counter that always increase with each block. And the block cipher is just used to generate the key stream independently, which is parallelizable. And and CTR decryption and encryption are just the same operation. That's an important thing. So it turns a block cipher into a stream cipher. cipher decryption, the decryption of the cipher itself is never used, and the encryption is just used to generate a key stream. So what if we decrypt with a different key? Well, we just get a different key stream, and we just end up XORing with a different key stream, and we know these key streams in advance from, again, the nonce and the keys in this case. So what if we craft a ciphertext that gives meaningful plain text for different key streams, so-called an ambiguous ciphertext? So if you just encrypt the same plain text with two different keys, you end up XORing the plain text against two different key streams. And then, because it's just XOR, you can see that if you cut your sausage at different offsets and you mix the sausage together, then you ended up, you can actually make a ciphertext that will decrypt to the part you wanted to be correct for each of the plain texts. So you can freely modify the ciphertext. Nothing prevents that. It's just XOR. And the key stream, you already know them, because again, the plaintext and the ciphertext are not involved. And so if we change the ciphertext bytes, we set the plaintext bytes again. So, and one thing that is interesting here is that, so basically you just want that the red part and the green part are something you control and something that is meaningful, and that's basically two valid contents in the same file. Well, that's just binary polyglots. So let me introduce a tool that I wrote, and is already public. This is called Mitra. And Mitra is not a parser or validator. It just knows the bare minimum of each format. It takes two files as input. It identifies the file format, and then it tries different layouts of working polyglots based on what it knows about the format. So it definitely doesn't understand the whole file format, but it just knows the minimum to be able to make working polyglots out of it. The point of explaining the whole thing behind Mitra is not the goal of this talk. So there will be probably another talk on this. But basically here you can just use Mitra kind of blindly to generate binary polyglots, and in most cases it should just work. Mitra supports as many formats as I thought I could add so far. So lots of combinations. Some combinations are not possible for clear reasons, like the formats that all start at offset zeros cannot be combined together. And again, it's only these combinations, but actually we are talking about container formats. So for example, zip, RIF, and ISO, base media, or OGG are actually formats that are used for a lot of actual formats themselves. So when you say MP4 or JPEG2, it's actually the same container format underneath, which means you can make polyglots of them, even though the format might be different from an external perspective and different extension, but the container is the same. So yeah, Mitra is just, you give it two files, it will identify. It's very weak in terms of identification. I didn't try to make it robust in this case. And then it will create the kind of polyglots that it thinks it will work, that it thinks will work. So if we, for example, take an example of, we just put, so I provide online some minimal input files if you want to do some experiments. If you do it with the JZip and a RAR file, then because RAR is valid at any offset but zero, or not offset, not just zero, then concatenating, appending a RAR file to a JZip will just work. So RAR, Mitra knows that and will just concatenate that. So that's a valid JZip RAR file here. And the name of Mitra files are a bit awkward. I have a slide for that. But basically it keeps some extra information about the file data, which is useful for the next steps. And that's just a working JZip RAR polyglot by concatenation. Now, depending on when you start reading, if you start reading at the first offset or at offset 24, then you will see different files, and that's exactly what is interesting to us. So now all you need, that's actually the slicing that we thought about, that we discussed, and then there's this script called brioche, which is just, will take two different keys and will just, from the file name, it knows where the slicing needs to be done, and it will encrypt the two key streams to the same polyglot plain text with two different keys, and then merge the encrypted text together the ciphertext together at the right offsets, which will give you ambiguous ciphertext for the counter mode. So this is the result that you get of decrypting the ciphertext with 2 different keys. And as you see, the RAR file is intact and the JZIP is intact in the other case, and these 2 files will just work. So it's first thing, it works with polyglot, but it's a bit better than that, because one format is in clear while the other is still being encrypted, I mean with the wrong keys. So basically one is hidden, which is nice to hide malicious payload, and it's also pretty good because, for example, in the case of the RAR, you cannot tell that the data before it is at the start of the file is a JZIP that is being encrypted. So it's pretty good to prevent security checks like Adobe Readers does when you open a PDF. So it's a polyglot, standard binary polyglot, but already just a bit better, which is quite cool already. So the files just work. I mean, there could be some warning, but they are supposed to work at least with the most standard tools. And now let's move on to the new, something more interesting, the GCM mode. So basically, oh yeah, you don't. As you noticed, you don't want an authenticated encryption. So basically, you want some authenticated encryption like GCM, because obviously with CTR you can just change the key, and then there's no way to know if you use the right key or anything. I mean, that's what you don't want first. But it's actually not that easy. So the GCM mode looks like that. It looks a bit complex, and it certainly looked very complex to me initially. But basically, it's just a CTR mode with the authentication that can be done in parallel, and there's a pre-authentication that is done on the the associated data, and this pre-auth doesn't depend on the plaintext or ciphertext. So it's done before, and now you can already maybe see that the same rules are applicable. So basically, in comparison with the CTR mode, the GCM mode is just it takes one extra input, the authentication data, and gives out a tag. We'll see that later. So the tag is depends on the the authenticated data in plain text, the ciphertext output, the key and the nonce, and it's just a single block. It's just a single value, and after decryption you recompute, and it's compared to the stored value, which means you needed to know the original key, and you need to know the original authentication data, which was in plain text. So for example, the clear text, the start of the header of the packet, which is in clear, while the content of the data is encrypted. So that's why it's using the ciphertext and the authenticated data in clear. And this tag is reused, recomputed after decryption and compared to the store value. And if it succeeds, then your decryption was authenticated, in theory. So yeah, the GCM mode basically, again, as a recap, it's a CTR, but there is an extra function for authentication of ciphertext, and any modification of authenticated data, ciphertext, the key, and the nonce will fail the authentication. So we can't use a different key. Wrong. We can actually make it that 2 decryptions with 2 different keys both pass verification. The thing is here, you need to know both keys. But at least if you are able to plan in advance the keys, then you sacrifice a block, you correct a block, and do some computation, and you will craft a block so that the 2 different keys will authenticate to the same tag. Now you can even sacrifice another block, and then you can even plan the tag in advance, which is even more powerful if you needed the tag to be something known. But this is that was a bit shocking to me, because it's not seen as a risk. It was known from the beginning. So basically, oh yeah. So is it possible that there is any failures in the wild with GCM? Because now you can see where it's coming, right? Well, it turns out that all these companies are affected. So there was first this paper about that is basically the start of our research. What was shown to me as the start of this research. And Facebook Messenger was vulnerable. So basically, you could send a picture that would be different for the recipient and the abuse team. And internally, it was caught during the design phase. The service subscribed with Google was vulnerable. And although, Amazon was vulnerable too. So if Amazon, Facebook, and Google were vulnerable, then maybe you want to know and to check yourself. Especially now that I'm providing the tools to make it easier to exploit. So is GCM broken? Well, absolutely not. I mean, the property are just not. It's a non-property for cryptographers, and there was not this is just working as intended. But it was just not seen as a security risk because, people just didn't explore maybe enough and didn't think it could be a risk, right, in itself. So now the Timecryption part is that some systems have key rotation and they have a key ring with all the keys, and they just try the first key, all the keys, newest one first, until one of the decryption is authenticated. So you see it's where it's coming. If you can abuse the key generation algorithm. Sadly, there's no standard of key generation algorithm. So it could be that the system is vulnerable, and because it's not following a standard, then the implementation you have to pen test is vulnerable. Then you can craft a tag that will be valid for a key now. I mean, like right now, today. I mean, if the key rotate every day or something, and if you can already tell that what will be the key in a week, then you can already craft you send a file that will be uploaded, encrypted to the backend, and a week later there will be new keys in the key ring, and the newest key will be seen, and you made it so that it's decrypt authenticated with the tag that you crafted in advance. And now this key will be used silently by design, and then you get another payload, and you control both. You control something now, you control what it's going to be in some time, and there's no bug. It's a part of the. It's by design. It works silently, and this is the way it works. If there is no matching, so you control the present, control the future, and it's not a bug. It's like it's known as a potential risk of GCM, as is. And now, you have all the tools just to make it very easy. So again, just use Mitra to generate the polyglots, and in GCM subdirectory of Mitra, there's a script that just takes the polyglot itself and does this thing for you in this script itself. So the CTR was just doing the slicing, encryption, and slicing. The GCM script also correct the authentication. So basically, generates a tag so that it matches both keys. And we made it very easy so that you just use, so it's called meringue, and you just used polyglot out of Mitra, and then that's all you need to know. It just takes some time if the value is not already computed, but that's all. And it's probably easier than, and it's definitely easier than for understanding the algorithm in the original paper. And it just works. That's all. Now you can, if you find such a system, then you can decide the payload, and it works in a generic way. So you have also a script to actually verify, and I provided a lot of examples if you need to demonstrate it in advance. I mean, the examples are public, and the examples are in the slides already. So it works with, for example, PDF and executable, or GIF and DCOM. So DCOM is the medical image. You don't know it, but all the doctors use it, and it's usually quite vulnerable. So if you see where I'm leading, and of course you can do a DCOM P file. So and again, these files are available. So if you want to explain to someone without the whole paper, you can just show them. Now there is so far it was strictly binary polyglots, but what about if there is an overlapping bytes? Well, I mean, this is something new, which was, if you know about it, something you could already have with Ange encryption when you would have CBC with a manipulated initialization vector. It's something I presented a couple of years ago. So far, you slice the ciphertext strictly to each payload. So each byte belongs to strictly one payload. But could you do something extra? And can we control two output at once? So we know that we obtain the ciphertext is the same for two plain text and two key streams. So basically, the value of the two key streams being XORed, we could find a nonce so that we have this at the start of the files, at least, equivalent to the XOR of the start of the two plain text, which means you can brute force a nonce that gets the right XOR value for both keys. And now this triggers an extra kind of polyglots, which is again the same, uses Ange-cryption, which is a crypto polyglot, so basically with overlapping bytes. And you can have two formats starting at offset 0, like PDF and PE, JPEG and PNG and other things. Or you can even have not a polyglot, but two formats can be the same with different contents, if that's something you want. And that's something that is not possible with standard polyglots. In the case of the formats being the same with different contents, it's a bit more similar to hash collision, which I presented before. But you can see that it's possibilities beyond the standard polyglots, which is even more interesting. And we have to reuse the knowledge of standard polyglots. So it's even better. And it's not that, I mean, I made it easy so that you have a nonce script, it just does what you expect. You just give it either the headers, both headers, and it will brute force the nonce with the keys you gave it so that it's, it will just does it brute forcing. It's just stupid brute forcing. There's no optimization. And of course, the fewer bytes you need, the faster the brute force. So you definitely want to focus on files formats that just need a very few bytes at the start of the file. And you just reuse the computed nonce in Meringue, and that's all. So it works again with PDF and executable, and it's fully generic. Once again, it could be the next PDF that you download, and it could be WannaCry.exe. You don't need access to the source of the file. It's just works at executable at binary level without knowledge of the file. So, which is why we did that with our actual paper. We'll see that later again. But basically, the actual article that is available publicly can also be decrypted to a PDF viewer. So, and they both come from the same file, ciphertext. I mean, you just have one file. So there is a flag for that on Mitra. It's disabled by default because the polyglots don't work as is. So I don't want people to be confused that, hey, the polyglot doesn't work, because you need an extra cryptographic operation to restore the content. The overlapping data is stored in the file names in curly brackets. And the longer you want an overlap, the longer it takes to brute force. That's all. So of course, it's interesting to look for methods that takes smaller amount of bytes to brute force. And now it's really, oh yeah, so again, as I mentioned, we can make two files with the same type, but different contents. And you just abuse here, so the start of the file is the same, but you just abuse a commandlet, a bit like a hash collision, and you end up with different data being parsed. So this is very easy with JPEG, because it has a very short magic, and it starts with the declaration, with the length of the command, and basically you just abuse it so that you will hide images with basically with comments of different length, and then the parser will end up on different offsets of the file, of the same file. So yeah, you can even, if you want, you can even have a predefined tag, or the file, and so the file can know in advance which, by sacrificing one more block, you can fix the tag, and you can also correct the authentication data instead of ciphertext if that's something you want. So, for example, in the case of our paper, the PDF, as mentioned, the PDF article is also a PDF viewer executable, which you can obtain from the file by just two statements of OpenSSL. And also the tag for authentication is known in advance because we sacrifice two blocks of the payload to correct the authentication. So this is an overview of the how it works. So don't hesitate if you have questions. But on the other hand, you don't have to understand how it works, and it's just 3 scripts, and they just do all the work for you basically. So Mitra takes the files, generates the polyglot, and with the information in the file name, Nonce will reuse it and brute force it if needed, and Meringue will just take that and generate the ciphertext with the authenticated data that you want. So the tools are already available, and we already provided lots of examples, which are lightweight, copyright-free, and everything. So you can convince people without too much hassle. I mean, if they needed to, but you can also naturally make your own without any problem. And that's so. Basically, I hope that by now you know that authenticated encryption without key commitment is a security risk, and you want to avoid that for obvious reasons now. This is pretty cool stuff because you craft a file, you upload it to some backend which is encrypted, and you download it later. You're transparently infected, and there's no bug. I mean, it was just authenticated decryption in the whole process. So that's pretty nice. It's silent danger. It's pretty cool. And again, they had those weaknesses from the beginning. And now with the binary polyglots, you make that easy to exploit. So there are some solutions that we suggest in our paper and in other papers. So for example, one of the suggestions is to prepend zeros at the start of the ciphertext and check the presence of the decryption, which is pretty easy. Doesn't require complete change of everything. It can be risky with some file formats, but it's a good and easy solution. And people kept telling me that binary polyglots were useless, but here it's pretty cool, I think, because really you make a payload that looks normal and evolves with time with the key rotation silently, and that's something that people may not expect or people will not expect. But one more thing, it's not just CTR and GCM. And GCM SIV, which is supposed to be nonce-resistant, even OCB3 are exploitable too. There's just some extra constant, but the ideas are similar, and the scripts are available too. So basically, these don't work at byte level, but at block level. So you just need to align payloads. That's pretty easy, and you just need more than one block. But even for OCB3, it's not a lot of blocks. It's not a big size, so it's definitely doable. And just for GCM SIV, the computation is proportional to the size. So yeah, it needs a bit more computing. But if the payloads are tiny, and you may just want a tiny payload so that you infect you for faster computation, but the file is still valid, then it's pretty quick. So basically, yes, OCB3 and GCM SIV are vulnerable too, and we provide the scripts. So the scripts here are not in Mitra repository, but they are in the key commitment repository from Stefan. And they use SageMath, which is just Python with extra math stuff, so no big deal. And I made some version of the script so that they directly take Mitra polyglot as input. So again, you just read Mitra, you just launch Mitra, and then you launch these versions of the scripts, and you have your SIV or OCB3 ambiguous cipher working. No two command lines, not difficult. So the examples are some examples are already available. So save some computing if you need to prove something. And that's it for now. I mean, let me know if you have a question. We have bonus slides and potential answers. But thanks for your attention for this first online talk of mine. I'm all ears.
That was beautiful, man. Like, yeah, my mind, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what you've just said. Yeah, that's insane. Thank you so much once more for taking us through that crazy content. I mean, I'm glad we're recording this because I'm gonna have to watch this back a few times, I think, to kind of fully appreciate and understand what you've just given to us here. So yeah, thank you for that, Ange. We're going to open it up now. We've still got, for sure, a bit of time of Ange as well, where we can have some questions from all you guys who are joining us here live. So please don't be afraid to either in the Google Meet now, you can feel free to unmute yourself if you like, as we are not a huge amount. But also, please feel free to use the chat, or you guys on the YouTube stream as well. Please, add your questions if you've got any. We'll give you guys a few minutes. I certainly have a couple myself that I can start with, if that's cool, Ange. First of all, what inspired the tool names? Were you hungry when creating and coding this stuff, or why the fun food names?
No, it's actually just because I'm French, I guess, and I like food. But initially, I think they had totally boring name like GCM and Decrypt and whatever. So that's why people need something I remember. And I think my son was cooking at that time, cooking meringue, that's why.
Beautiful.
I forgot to mention that this work wouldn't have been possible without the support of my colleagues. It's an interesting story that Daniel Weichenbacher started it, but if you meet me in real life, you can ask me. And Atul and Sophie also tried their best to explain to me, and also the reviewers like Philip and Tyson. So definitely not something I would have been able to do alone. Just wanted to make that clear.
Sweet. Nope. Thank you to all involved for this. Yeah, crazy research. It's really, really cool to see how you guys, still more to come from the sounds of it as well. So I hope there's another opportunity to hear updates further down the line when the time comes. So another question I have, if whilst we're waiting for others to bring some in, I guess, you mentioned a couple of real world examples where, this vulnerability was seen or potentially even exploited with both Facebook and even Google internally as well. Are there any others that you're aware of or can kind of elaborate a bit more? How, is this widely known or used, or is it still so really kind of nuanced that it's not really an attack vector that is known about or used, or is it something we should be concerned about in daily business essentially right now, or is there room for it to become a problem, do you think?
So that's a bit of a problem. That's the biggest surprise to me is that all this was apparently, GCM has this vulnerability, but they never thought that it was a security risk, that it could be exploited. So it was a shock on both sides when they saw what they could do with file formats, and when they just tell me, it's not you can correct the tag, and it's not like a pre-image attack on a collision. So it's really the fact that these the world of binary manipulation and cryptography just says, actually, you can do that easily. Holy shit! And that's exactly how it started, this research, because they were like, oh, you have this property in GCM. Can you actually exploit it? And like, wait, what? And I didn't know what GCM was a year ago, so I never cared to look. So for me, there was no way there could be such a problem. And for cryptographers, it's well, this is known. This is just math, and this is not a problem because it cannot be exploited, right? So I'm still not sure if we know the answer to that. But yes, it's actually interesting when you have Facebook, Amazon, Google, all being vulnerable to this. And cryptographers are like, it is known. And then people like me would be like, there's no way that can be true.
Yeah, I mean,
at least being surprised.
Sorry, go ahead, Candid.
We'll see. I mean, now with the tool making it very easy to use, I assume there will be a few follow-up CVEs number being generated. Interesting.
For you bug bounty hunters out there, you're welcome. Ange is just giving you a whole new revenue stream to go out and check and look for. So good job. I was going to say, like, as part of my daily business, of course, where I do a lot of pen testing and, applications across all over the place, and file upload functionalities is very common and very expected, right, in modern day applications. And so my mind is already just, thinking of all these possible attack scenarios, right, of how could we utilize a file polyglot like this, where it can bypass upload filters that may be present, for example. Like, what do developers need to consider? Like, what is their saving grace at this point? Like, you've mentioned now some recommendations in your paper, but that's only going to work if obviously the designers and developers of GCM and other affected technologies, like they take this on board and do something about it, right? Like if they decide or continue that this doesn't change, what other options are there for people who have to use or are using this technology? What can they do to potentially protect themselves or detect against potential attacks from this sort of theoretical attack vector that you've produced now?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know, because I'm definitely not the cryptographer, and this is already so much over my head that I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not going to suggest anything. I mean, I cannot take the risk myself. I just know what you can do with files, and the rest of cryptography, it's definitely not my stuff.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, you've posed some people a tough challenge, obviously, then, for sure. The only other final thing I would have then is, have you done any sort of kind of testing or statistics of, including some payloads that are potentially malicious, let's say, and subjecting them to AV solutions or things where, you would expect things to detect them? Like, do you have any sort of insights like this yet at all? Or maybe this is something, as a follow-up that some other people can do to see the rates of detection that current solutions are able to achieve or not right now, maybe?
As far as I know, there is never a standard ACA file for encryption. So basically, as soon as you upload some ciphertext, all the tools will just say, this is not a file, this is garbage, and just ignore it. So this is why there's not such a thing like, if this software or hardware is in test mode, then it will decrypt stuff with this. So that's it's very difficult to get test vectors of crypto because of that, right? I mean, test vectors to first be behind the crypto, because it will just incorrectly decrypt or stay encrypted, and that's all.
Yeah.
So you cannot test, basically.
I would even add, right, even just a standard polyglot, a lot of the security scanners will miss those as they parse it incorrectly, or as in kind of taking one way and not the other. So, and there have been tests on that. And now you're adding encryption into the mix, so there is not really any standard for it. So I would assume it will bypass it. Question is, of course, will it get executed automatically on the other hand, or are you using it for command and control servers or whatever? So that's the multiple avenues that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, or the one is that you just have an executable which drops the PDF and opens it and inspects in the background. And before it was a PDF, now it's a PDF dropper of the same PDF. You can even get the payload to actually perform the decryption so that it doesn't grow in size too much.
This is what I'm saying, like your example with the PDF file and the viewer itself all in one file. Like, I mean, that's self-execution. Like, even if you don't necessarily have execution rights on a box that you're looking at, like, you don't need to if you're able to somehow, enforce the application to open itself. Like, that's just, for me, that's just mind-blowing, like, how this works right now, honestly. Thank you so much again. I mean, do we have any more questions from anyone who is still with us? Or if not, I think we'll slowly wrap things up. I certainly need a couple more beers to calm my brain down after that now. But we'll give you guys just a couple more minutes to bring in anything you may have. Otherwise, I just want to start taking this opportunity already to say, Ange, thank you so much again for coming in and being a good friend to our community here in DEF CON Switzerland, but also around the world. Like, it's we know you're a busy man and you've got always a lot of good content behind you. And we appreciate you taking the time here, especially in these hard times where we're still doing this online. But it's cool to see faces that are familiar and chat with people after the fact with this tool. And of course, we look forward to being able, when the time is right, to physically meet up again. And I will definitely buy you a couple drinks to forget what I've just heard right now. So that's great. Other than that, then, I guess we will leave it here. I don't think we have any more questions across the chat board. So, thank you once more for everyone here. And Candid, I guess I'll hand over to you to finish off.
Yes, as I said, the slides are available as well. I just reposted the link. We also will make the recording available online. So if you follow us, you will see the link. And I highly recommend following us, for example, on Twitter, DefConCH, where we will announce the next virtual cons as well. As Tom said, we're looking forward to the physical meetings again, but at the moment, we do have our monthly Beer on Tuesday on a Discord channel, so you're happy to join those as well. And of course, yes, we'll try to bring more content to keep you happy and busy as well, as there's lots of good information that you probably need to go over again to realize what Ange has done here.
Absolutely.
So with that, I'd say thanks as well from ours end. Thank you for joining DEF CON Switzerland VirtualCon #1, and enjoy the rest of the day. Stay safe. Thank you.
All the best, guys. Bye.